If you want to learn how to create a large design just like this without floral foam, then keep watching. Welcome back to today's video. Now you can probably tell I'm in a different position to normal. Normally I'm behind the arrangement, but I'm anticipating that today's design is going to be quite large. So I'm going to stay in front of it so you get to see the whole arrangement as it comes together, and I won't be lost and hidden behind it. Now today's video is showing you how you can create a design that would be suitable for a pedestal, for a wedding, maybe for something for the church, but it's got quite a grand large container, which incidentally is a container from Home Bargains, so it's nothing that you won't be able to get hold of yourself. This is actually a punch bowl that was sold a couple of years ago, and I've got a matching pair that I use a lot at weddings. It's a really great base because it's quite deep to hold plenty of water, and that works well with today's design because I'm going to be doing an environmentally friendly arrangement without any floral foam or wire netting. I'm going to be using the grid effect at the top. Now the grid effect is talked about a lot on social media. I see questions asked a lot about how to create it and how it works. And it's maybe not the best mechanics for very large floral designs, which will become evident as I create the design itself. But what happens is if you insert flowers or foliage in, there's no support lower down in the container to stop your flowers falling apart. So what you basically have to do is to create almost like a bed of greenery or flowers there at the base. So that sometimes adds extra cost to your arrangement. I'm going to do it today with some greenery at the base, but the rest of the flowers that I've got are very much mismatched. Flowers that I picked from the garden over the weekend while I've been tidying the garden. Some of the flowers are left from work we did at the weekend. And it's generally bits and pieces that I've got left here in the studio that aren't going to be used. And the reason I'm doing it this way this week is to explain to you that you don't always have to go out and buy a whole range of flowers like I sometimes show you in videos. As a commercial florist, we tend to create designs that we can repeat time and time and time again, because if a customer buys a design off us in January and then she phones up and she says, oh, you did a lovely design for me in January, it's now April, can you make something similar? We need to have some type of record or some type of system in place so that we can copy those designs. And that's sometimes why I say to you, have 5 flowers for the focal point, 3 flowers for the line, and so on and so forth. But you can create designs with any flowers that you've got, any greenery that you can get hold of. So I wanted really to inspire you today to try and create a design and not to worry too much about how many flowers you've got. I've got garden flowers, I've got some supermarket flowers, I think I might have some florist flowers here as well. But we're going to start by creating some base weight here in the middle. And that is going to help support the flowers. Now it doesn't matter where I put anything in this design, it's going to tip forward. And what happens is that flower stalk doesn't sit at the base of my container, so it doesn't have access to the water. You can improve that by putting some wire netting at the bottom, but ideally by placing a grouped effect in the middle and around the top, a little group of foliage. I've just realised I haven't got my bin, so you're going to have to excuse me when I throw it on the floor. We're going to create a sort of base structure of greenery around the top section, and that will allow the remainder of the flowers to have a support network or a cushioned effect at the bottom to hold everything into place. But before I go any further, let's get some water. Now try and use flower food. A little bit of bleach in the water works quite well. Don't use sugar or lemonade. Don't use vodka. It's too strong for the flowers, not the vodka, the sugar. The sugar is too strong for the flowers. It makes them open too quickly, and then they won't last quite as well for you. And if you're not sure on how to care for your flowers, then have a look in the description box at the end, because there is a downloadable information leaflet that you can buy which gives you all the care instructions for your fresh flowers. So let's get that cushioned effect into place. This piece here is rhododendron, and that happened to be in a mixed bunch left over by one of the students that comes here during the week, and I'm repurposing it in today's design. Next, I'm going to use some ordinary common ivy, making sure that all the stems are clean on the bottom and there's no debris there that's going to contaminate the water. And I've recently seen a comment on a Facebook post, I think, which asked, how do you replenish the water in this type of design? And really you don't. What you need to do is to make sure you've used that flower food, because that will keep the flower water nice and clean. And then you just add to it. You keep replenishing the water. But what this is going to do, and I'm not too concerned about the shape of this because it's almost going to be hidden by the time I've finished the design. This is almost like a mechanic. It's there to hold everything into place and give me that nice support network that you're going to hear me mention a few times in this video. Now, very trendy floral designs at the moment that you see in florist shops for weddings quite often use very large hydrangeas at the base, and that does exactly the same as what I'm doing here with the greenery. It's creating that base structure. It's creating something that's going to hold my flowers into place. So as long as it's a bunchy greenery, it could be hebe, pittosporum, eucalyptus, then it's going to give a nice bit of base weight there in the arrangement, and hopefully it's going to hold all of the remaining flowers in position. Hopefully I can tilt this forward just a little bit for you to see. So big pieces of bunchy greenery at the base, or some type of large flower, which is going to help support them. Because now when I try to put a flower in, it's not going to move around quite so much. It's got support from that greenery. And then I'm going to work from the outside in, because then I'll have stems in the middle, which will help support the remainder of the flowers, because they almost interlock between one another and you get a really solid structure. Now I would suggest that you make these designs in situ. They're not particularly good for transporting in vehicles. If you're working on them for church, then I would suggest you make them in the church. Now if you are picking garden greenery, this isn't a garden greenery, this is a florist greenery. If you are picking anything from the garden, you need to condition it properly. You need to place it in water overnight. Don't try and use it as soon as you've cut it from the garden, because it just isn't going to last. Now that design so far is very green, so I'm going to introduce a silvery coloured garden foliage. This one is Senecio. That one is shaped much nicer in that position, and I do quite often say with these types of arrangements to really look at the greenery, see which way it's naturally growing, and aim to put it in the design so it emphasises the shape that it's naturally grown in. Now I'm going to use this one more towards the top at the back, and you can see now it's got support with that greenery so it stays in place. Now I'm not aiming today to do a particular shape with this arrangement. It's going to be influenced by the shape of my flowers. Don't get too het up with this type of arrangement about making that perfect triangle, because it's really hard to do when you've got a natural mechanic and you don't have floral foam. Before foam was invented, we didn't worry about triangles, we didn't worry about trying to make perfect shapes. We let the flowers speak for themselves. So this is Sambuca nigra, so this is black Sambuca. You might recognise the flower on it because Sambuca is the elder, and you can make elderberry wine or whatever with that. But I'm thinking I need to get this in so that pink flower is visible. And it might take me a little while of playing around with it. So hopefully at the end I won't have lost that really lovely purple or pinky purple flower. I do believe I've got another one, and this is more of a cascading sort of floppy shape. So I'm going to try my best to place that in the arrangement to highlight that lovely shape. but I think it's going to have to come on the same side, which we might not do in traditional floristry. We might try and spread the colour out, but I quite like the way that's working so far. So I'm going to create an arrangement that's probably the same height as the container again. I had to think about that then. Maybe the same height as my container and maybe a little bit taller. But it's a design that's natural, free-flowing, very elegant, and isn't too styled, isn't too formal. Now it does look particularly odd at the moment because there's not much style to it or not much shape to it. Now I'm going to add in some longer greenery, so we're going to extend the colour outwards. This is buddleia, so if you've got that butterfly bush in your garden, this is the greenery. It's got a lovely grey tone, so it's going to pick up on the nice colouring of my silver base, and that will help extend the colour and the shape out towards the outside. This one is Senecio, the same as I've got in the front. So if you think about the way everything grows, the way it's naturally formed, that's how you should place it in your arrangement. Remembering that from the side, that arrangement needs to have flowers all the way through to the back to give it depth and to stop the arrangement tipping forward. Now I know what flowers I've got to use here today, so I've got a rough idea in my head of where I think they're going to go. And that's something I quite often try to encourage you to do. Visualize in your mind where you think these different flowers are going to go. If it's a woody stem type like this one, particularly a foliage that doesn't cope very well once it's been cut from the plant, make sure you've conditioned it properly and give the stem that vertical cut so that it has a bigger surface area to access the water. Now what I've done here is I've used that darker red colour on the opposite side where I have red on this colour, because I only have one piece of the acer. I don't have matching pairs to put on either side. But imagine that in a grand building or a large church, and it's really going to create a nice statement piece. Now the benefit, I think, of working without floral foam is that you can get a lot more flowers into your container and you can get a much bigger and more opulent style. Beautiful long pieces of greenery work far better at the back and the sides to create shape. I don't want to make it too matchy and too perfect because that's not the style I'm going with. And I've got this sat on a turntable today so I can spin it around to work on it. But if you can imagine this sitting on top of one of these grey plinths, it's going to look absolutely amazing. Now some people might be concerned that this area or this piece of greenery here is backwards because it's lighter green that side, but the way I had it was showing the grey. And I've done that intentionally because I want the grey to pick up on the colour of my base. But what's good about this foliage is you could use it on either side. And I've got a nice support work now with the ivy there at the base. I know it's not all going to fall apart when I get towards the end. Now before I add too many flowers in at the top, I'm going to add in some trails of ivy. I'm going to do it now because I can still see the grid effect there where I can put my ivy into. If it's overfilled towards the end, I'm going to find it difficult to feed the ivy in. And I'm going to do that lovely cluster of ivy all cascading down, possibly just from one side. We'll see how we get on. I might add in some on the other side, but I'm thinking about having a really big display of it on one side. And what you could do in this situation is if you've got a house plant with ivy or trailing stephanotis, anything that's going to naturally cascade, you could quite easily sit a house plant in there or a garden plant to fill out an area, and you can reuse that time and time again. And that's quite a good tip with church flowers, because you don't have to then keep looking for greenery and keep paying for flowers. You could easily add in a little plant in there, add it onto some kebab sticks so that it's almost like on stilts, not quite sitting in the water. Flower pot can be disguised by your greenery, and then you've got a gorgeous texture and a lovely colour of flowers to go in your design. One of my tallest flowers that I've got is a flower that some people would probably call a weed. This is valerian, and obviously this is red valerian, but it comes in different shades of pinks and whites. And I've always thought of this as being almost like a weed. Around where I live, it grows quite often in derelict buildings. You quite often see it in churchyards. I've got a display of it in the garden because it's a really long-lasting flower. The bees absolutely love it. But you can buy this as a wildflower from suppliers of seeds and growers. So even though I sort of refer to it as a weed, it is a really sought after wildflower. And because it's one of the taller flowers that I've got, I'm going to place it towards at the back. If you do grow these, they flower in just for such a long period of time, and the wildlife love it. So nice bit of height there at the back. If anything is moving around or not staying in the position you want it to go, that's okay, because you can move it around, because we haven't got to worry about creating holes in the floral foam. We just need to make sure that all the greenery, thorns, leaves below the water level have been removed to help us keep that flower water as clean as we possibly can. And I'm going to group these together. I'm going to put them all on one side in that nice clustered form. Now I know I'm quite aware that there's a bit of a gap here, but I do have a darker foliage that's going to go in at the end. I'm going to keep going with my focal flowers now, and that's going to be this gorgeous peony. A little bit of a scent to it, but nothing too strong. And I'm going to use these more towards the centre, and then I'm going to group them over to one side so we make a really dramatic impression with them. If you like symmetry, this isn't going to be the design for you, but I just wanted to show you that you don't have to have things on either side of the focal point. You don't necessarily have to have things matching. Just try and use the larger, more dominant flowers towards the middle, and the softer flowers or the line flowers towards the outside. I do have 5, but I think I'm only going to put 3 in. We'll see how the design comes together. These are Siberian irises. They're from my garden. And if you want something that's really easy to grow, then this is a lovely one to come in the garden. It's different from the irises that we buy as florists or from the supermarket. It's a different variety, but they come up in a huge big cluster in my garden, and they go on for absolutely ages. The flower is quite delicate, but if it's conditioned properly, they last really, really well. Far better in my garden than the traditional spring flowering iris. And I happen to have 4 of them, and we quite often encourage you not to arrange in 4s, but what I'm going to do is put a cluster of 3 on one side, and then I'm going to bring one over here because I've got 4 and I want to use them all. And now I've got quite a sumptuous, moody type of arrangement with a real rich colour combination. To add a little softness, I've got these sweet, delicate little flowers that have come from the heuchera. Now this is another one that I would recommend any of you to grow in the garden. Not only do you get those fantastic leaves that come in a real variety of colours, the little bells are so delicate and dainty. They work wonderfully in lots of different styles of arranging. And I'm just going to add these here. You can see now how that grid effect is holding my flowers into position. I don't have to worry about them flopping and falling into position. They're holding really strongly. And with the slightly longer ones, I think I'm going to bring them over to the edge here. Now, when I filled this container with water at the very beginning, I only put a shallow amount of water in, just in case I needed to tip it forward to show you. But when I finish, I'm going to fill this right to the very top, because that will help keep those flowers hydrated. It's really important to use flower food, and it's important that your container is thoroughly cleaned before you start so that your flowers are going to last a long period of time. Now, I did originally say I wasn't going to put all of the 5 peonies in, but I've just taken a step back to have a look at it because today I'm working really close to it. And I think you're missing this flower here on the camera. So I am going to use all 5 of them. But it just goes to show that if you don't have a vast quantity of flowers, it is still possible to make an arrangement. And this is one of the reasons why I suggest you should do it in situ, is because this really large peony here, it's an expensive flower, it's a big bloom, it's a dominant flower in the arrangement. If you can't see it from a sitting or a standing position that the audience or the bride and groom are going to see it, then it's pointless putting it in the arrangement. And the camera angle is slightly different to the position that I'm looking at it from. So what I'm going to do is add all 5 of them, and then we've made a little bit more of impact there in the middle. Now I'm far happier with that now, with the 5 peonies in there. It's looking really fantastic. You're going to have to let me know, do you prefer this position where you can see the front of the arrangement more clearly, or do you prefer it when I'm turning it around? If we look at it all the way around, you can see that from the back here, I've got a small amount of the plastic tape that needs to be hidden. But if we look at it all the way around, I've got height, width and depth, which is what's important in a floral design. I've got flowers at a lower position, which is called recession, and that creates depth in the arrangement, so we get that gorgeous 3-dimensional form at the end, and not an arrangement that looks like it's flat and been squashed up against the wall. Now I'm going to finish this with 2 more flowers, or 1 flower and some foliage. If you saw the unboxing with me in my private Facebook group, which is called Sharon's Innovations Group, then you would have seen this amazing lilac spray rose. This one is called Blue Moon. And I've only got 1 left here in the studio. Everything else was used in a wedding on the weekend. And I'm going to place it in this area here because I feel there's a little gap and it's lacking in some colour there. And then I'm going to finish off with some really beautiful, look at that, foliage. Now you'll see I've used this quite a few times in tutorial videos, and the reason for that is because I've got a tree of it just outside the studio here. This is cherry blossom, and it works much nicer in that position or slightly higher than it does in that position. So that's the way I'm going to use it in the arrangement. It looks a little bit wet because I've given it a bit of a spritz in because believe it or not, the weekend was beautiful. We had lovely warm weather, and today it's pouring down. So this is going to finish off the arrangement. I'm going to add it in the back. It's going to give me some colour at the back. It's going to add a bit of height in. And because I've got that compacted greenery in at the front that I placed in the arrangement at the very beginning, I know none of this is going to fall apart. Let's get all the way around. Now this piece is going to work really nicely on the opposite side. I'm not looking to have it matching on either side. I'm going to place it in so that it brings some really elegant movement over onto the right side. In fact, I was going to put it on the right side, but because I've got this darker coloured acer, I'm going to change my mind and I'm going to put it more towards the back. I'm going to bring it up higher in this sort of position here. And hopefully when I turn that around, it's going to look quite attractive. I've still got an area here that I feel needs some colour, and we're going to try now, and hopefully I've got a piece of greenery that will fit in there. So I've not worried about creating any particular shape at all. I've just allowed the flowers to speak for themselves. They naturally turn to the left. I've put them in that position in the arrangement. If they want to drape forward, then I've used them at the front of the arrangement, which is what I'm going to do with this piece, because this has a nice shape to it. And that's, you know, that might be a good hint for you when you're choosing greenery. Look at it before you cut it from the tree. If you think that you want something to go in your arrangement on the left hand side, then pick something that has already is forming a natural shape that would look good in your arrangement on that one side. The problem sometimes with florist greenery that we buy here to work with is that it's all exactly the same. So I love working with natural branches because it adds that lovely character and personality to your arrangement. So I've just taken a little step back. I've also removed it from the turntable so you can see it in all its glory, and I think that's just magical. It's almost a triangle, but not that really severe triangle that we often try to create in floral foam. It's got softness and elegance. It's got a really opulent colour combination, and I think it's really wonderful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because it really does help other people find us, and it doesn't cost you anything. It just means that YouTube know you're enjoying all these videos. So subscribe, hit that notification bell to be told every time I upload a new video, which is generally on a Sunday afternoon. Like and share with your friends and family. Ask any questions you want in the comment box. And if you want to get that guide to care and conditioning, then you'll also find a link in the description box. So thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what you think. I look forward to seeing you for the next tutorial. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.